National parks are great places to see roaming bison, soaring eagles, and drones. Over the last year, more and more visitors have been flying unmanned aircraft with cameras around these open spaces, buzzing visitors and wildlife alike. Big national parks like Yosemite, Zion, and Grand Canyon have banned them, but some argue the bans are on shaky legal territory. For more, we turn to Gregory McNeal, a law professor at Pepperdine University's School of Law. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what are some of the problems posed by these drones?
So I guess the problem with drones, at least from the perspective of the Park Service, is that they're unregulated, and so there's a potential for a variety of harms. There could be safety harms. Someone loses control. Someone could get injured. You could imagine there could be injury to wildlife or to parks. You know, a drone could fly into one of the arches or something if someone lost control. And so I think the Park Service has reasonably said, we need to do something about this. But what they've unreasonably done is they've basically made a decision by executive fiat or by decree rather than following the procedures that they're required to follow under law to promulgate new regulations.
Well, what types of laws and rules already exist in regards to drones in national parks?
Yeah, so with regard to drones in national parks, there are no current rules that exist. If you scan the Code of Federal Regulations for the Park Service, the only thing that even comes close is a definition that speaks to aircraft. However, the Park Service, unlike other agency regulations that you'll find in other places in the U.S. Code, the Park Service's regulation says that aircraft are manned aircraft. So they make a distinction between unmanned aircraft and manned aircraft. And that's a really big problem for them because that definition that they're relying on to try and regulate aircraft doesn't speak to drones. And so what they've done is they've instead tried to make some pretty absurd interpretations of that regulation and begun to ban the use of drones basically by announcing it through Twitter, Facebook, and press releases.
Don't they just have to rewrite it?
That's exactly right. All they really have to do is rewrite it. Now, it's a little bit more complex than that. The Administrative Procedures Act and other federal laws require that when an agency is going to make regulations, because the agency is basically making laws that could put someone in jail or fine them a substantial amount of money, what the agency is supposed to do is announce publicly that they intend to pass some regulations, provide the public a short period of time in which to comment on that, and then promulgate a final regulation saying whether they took account of what the public had to say on those rules. And then the rules become official and they become enacted, and then they're also public. So someone who's fined or cited under a statute can look it up and know what it is that they did wrong. If the Park Service is facing some emergency situation where they need to act quickly, there's a procedure in place that allows them to promulgate emergency rules, and then that rule becomes an officially noticed rule until such time as they follow the regular procedure. That's the process they're supposed to follow, and the goal by doing that is it ensures public participation, which the hope is then that you'll have better rules than you otherwise might have if just some bureaucrats are creating the rules on their own in secret.
And now some park superintendents have banned them. It sounds though like these bans are going to be challenged, though.
I think the bans are going to be challenged. I mentioned earlier the definition of aircraft that they relied on. So the regulation, the Park Service's own rules say that aircraft are manned aircraft, so drones don't fall under that. So then they tried to turn to another provision that's traditionally been used to regulate base jumpers and parachutists. And that regulation looks to the delivery of objects, and it doesn't speak to aircraft. And so the Park Service is trying to argue that regulation prohibits the delivery of a drone by a drone. So you take your remote control helicopter, you fly it in the air, you land it, and their interpretation is that, well, that means that you were delivering something, and the something you were delivering was the delivery vehicle itself, which is just a real stretch. And so you can see they're trying really hard to prohibit something because they want to avoid the regular rulemaking process, and it's sort of odd to me that they want to avoid that process.
Now, the Park Service says there are existing laws that ban nuisances in the park and say that drones could fall under that regulation. I got to admit, if I were at a national park, Gregory, and I saw a drone, I want to see trees. I want to see birds. I don't want to see drones. It would be a nuisance to me. What do you say to that argument?
Yeah, I think that actually is a better use of the rule, a better use of their regulation. regulations. Now, I haven't looked up the nuisance regulations themselves, but that seems to be more of a natural fit than the prohibiting of aircraft. And you'll see in other regulations, for example, the regulation about snowmobiles. Snowmobile use is prohibited in the Park Service except in certain limited circumstances. And then there's a catch-all provision in the regulation that says only when their use is consistent with the park's natural, cultural, scenic, and aesthetic values, safety considerations, park management objectives, and will not disturb wildlife or damage park resources. That's pretty reasonable if you had something like that. My problem with the way the Park Service is approaching this is that let's say that I'm out in the park tomorrow and my daughter is flying a remote control aircraft that she got at the mall. Is that a drone? What makes it a drone? If it has a camera on it, does it make it a drone? If she's flying that near our campsite and the person in the campsite next door is bothered, can they go get a park ranger and then can the park ranger fine my daughter? And when we're talking about fines here, we're talking the most recent press release from the Park Service, the Zion Park Service, was that people can face fines of up to $5,000 and 6 months in jail. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to fine someone $5,000 or put them in jail for 6 months, you need some actual rules that you're going to cite to. You can't just rely on press releases and Facebook posts.
That's Gregory McNeal, an associate professor of law at Pepperdine University. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.